A very good morning and welcome along to round 15 of the 2025 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. It is the Marvel Fantastic Four London E-Prix, and what a thrill it is to be here for the final weekend of season 11. This year has been enthralling from start to finish, and I'm sure the last two races of the year are going to be no exception to that. A fortnight ago, we crowned our new Drivers' World Champion of Oliver Rowland in Berlin. He won it on the Sunday, but this is the calendar that we've had throughout 24 and 25. You can see we kicked off in Brazil, then Rowland really got into his stride in Mexico, Saudi Arabia and in Monaco. He also took victories in Tokyo as well. And then we also saw the likes of Cassidy and Evans having a bit of a resurgence after a challenging middle part of their year. They won both races in Germany, in Berlin, a fortnight ago. You see the Drivers' Championship here. Oliver Rowland has now won it. Pascal Wehrlein there, still very close with Taylor Barnard for second place. Antonio Finnis Costa and Nick Cassidy not too far adrift there either. All eyes, though, this weekend are on the Manufacturers and the Teams Championships, though. Those two titles still yet to be decided. Further down the order, you can see some other battles that are going on. Felipe Drugovich made his debut in Formula E a couple of weeks ago, got points on the board in the second race of the weekend for Mahindra as well. Great start to life for him in Formula E. Hopefully he won't be the last appearance that we see of the Brazilian driver. Well, the drivers have made their way in. My name is Tom Brooks. Alongside me, Billy Munger and Alan McNish to guide you through the action. Billy, like I said, a fortnight ago, great job from Oliver Rowland, but it's all eyes now on teams and manufacturers. Yeah, the teams and the manufacturers championships are the ones that we've got our attention on this week, and you can see there as the teams championship pops up, 23 points between Tag Heuer Porsche and Nissan. Penske and Jaguar still in contention as well. Yeah, good to be keen to see what's going to happen there. You can see Tag Heuer Porsche with that 23-point lead. To be able to win it here today, they need to have a 48-point advantage in that championship. They need to outscore Nissan by 25 points here today. Let's have a closer look, though, at this circuit, the London XL circuit. Unique to Formula E because it's indoors and outdoors. It's been resurfaced a little bit this year. Alan, talk us through this track.
It certainly has. It is a very unique circuit, as you say. Start and finish line turns 1, 2 is very, very tight, as we can see a lot of overtaking opportunities, but they very often go wrong, as 2 does not always go into 1. However, this part of the circuit is actually inside the building. Then at 4 and 5 you go outside. Chicane 6, 7 and 8, usually in the first lap some incidents there. A very quick chicane 10, 11, 12, 13, very, very much threading the needle. And then deep, heavy braking into 16. The attack mode on the outside, but that's a really, really exciting place to watch. And also one that I've seen a lot of people making mistakes taking the attack mode. 17, 18 and then back into the actual stadium itself. 19, overtaking zone it says there, but actually what it was a bottleneck zone right at the beginning of qualifying before they start down the start and finish line, and then another lap. Yeah, it does get very tight into that final corner. We saw that actually in free practice 1 yesterday between Pascal Wehrlein and Nick Cassidy. Cassidy was on a slow lap, Wehrlein was on a hot lap and got caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. The upshot is that Wehrlein's lap was compromised, but also there was very nearly contact into that final corner between the two. Yeah, practice contact is not what they want, so very glad I think both of them to avoid that one. See the probability of rain, 7%. Thankfully, it looks like it's going to stay away this weekend. We've not been able to shake it off since Monaco. No, it's been one of the parts at the end of the season where there's been just rain coming through, and torrential rain in Berlin. Certainly in the pit lane, it's always going to be dry, so for everybody that's down there, it's no problem as they're about to start. However, that will make it a little bit tricky just as they come from this grippy, very heavy, grippy surface inside to this slippery surface on the outside of the venue. Well, as we wait for the green light to come on at the end of pit lane, you can see a different livery for Nissan this weekend. They're promoting the new Nissan Leaf, so they've gone blue for the final 2 races of the season. As the green light comes on at the end of pit lane and the 22 drivers filter out onto the circuit, you'll also notice Neon McLaren in their swan song weekend in Formula E. They've got a different livery on their car. They've changed over to blue as well. You've also got the Maseratis. They're going to be blue, as they normally are. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works from a commentary box perspective to work out who's who.
Purple build, push, call, push, call, push. We'll do the first 2 push into no 7 and the final push of the run into no 8.
So saying a triple build there, so going to build up heat into the tyres in the race for 3 laps, then doing push, call, push. So 1 attack lap, 1 cool lap to get everything down into the sort of right temperatures again, and then push once more. Yeah,
it's not too hot out here this weekend so far. It's about 20 degrees, 22 degrees, I think, air temperature. So again, just not too hot for what we are used to in Formula E. We go to some very exotic places, don't we, Tom? Jakarta being one of those, which is always a scorcher.
Yeah, exactly that. And even, you know, when you get to Shanghai, that was really hot and humid as well. And Berlin, of course, actually quite a lot cooler than we were expecting, especially for the time of year. The rain, of course, helping that. And then we come to London, and thankfully the rain stayed away, but it is quite cool. Given the fact we've been sort of under heatwave conditions in the UK for the last couple of weeks, it is pretty typical that you get here and the weather has cooled down. But I think the drivers will probably be quite grateful for that. See the team principals watching on with pensive faces, waiting to see what's going to happen here in FP2. If you missed FP1 yesterday, it was Pascal Wehrlein who was the quickest of the lot by 0.3 of a second over Jake Dennis. Lap times down in the sort of early 1:08. That was about 3 seconds quicker than we had this time here last year. Of course, the difference between last year and this year is we're now in Gen 3 Evo era of Formula E, so that means that we've got an extra 50 kilowatts of power and also all-wheel drive as well. And also parts of this circuit have now been resurfaced, so it does make things a little bit quicker as well. Brief yellow flag there just down at turn 10, but it clears quite quickly, so somebody clearly just running on down at the Custom House chicane. But you can see the unique characteristics of this circuit out of the indoor arena into the outdoor section. You can see the surface changes there as well. It goes from sort of this grippy, almost sandpaper-like surface inside, then to this very slippery concrete outside.
And also very bumpy as well, and you can see them trying to actually find their way through the bumps as we are on board with Pascal Wehrlein coming back into the stadium section. But yesterday the bumps actually caught out Lucas de Grassi, where it shut down his car because of the force, the vertical force when it landed was so high that it tripped a sensor and then ultimately stopped his car.
Yeah, it did it again a second time, didn't it, in the session? So it stopped his car just before we were coming into this section here as well. And some drivers obviously not happy about that because they lost a bit of track time as a result.
Yeah, it's obviously not ideal. The drivers want as much track time as possible going into qualifying, but you know, that's just the battles that you face sometimes in Formula E. We've got lots of cars out there that all want the same piece of tarmac.
Yeah, it's a difficult circuit, this, as well, in terms of traffic, because the blind corners of the final sector make it very, very difficult. And, of course, the race engineers, communication between yourself and the driver, absolutely imperative this weekend.
The other thing is the GPS and things like that don't work fantastically well when you've got all the metal buildings around, so there's a little bit of offsets there, but it is one of the key parts, especially, as you were mentioning there, for the qualifying, to ensure that you don't actually trip over someone starting a lap, someone finishing a lap. We saw it yesterday, as you said earlier in commentary, and I can see that happening again. Even if they don't want it, it will happen.
You see coming down in towards the Custom House chicane, you've got turns 10 and 11, you go in, then you go through 12 and 13 as you exit that section there. It really does bottleneck up, and we did see a few drivers just sort of flirting with the edge of danger yesterday, going into there, and there's you can see the curbs that you've got, but then there's like an inner curb as well where it's raised up concrete. If you hit the first one, you're pretty much guaranteed you're going to clobber the second one as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you start getting onto the top edge of those curbs, it can bounce the car over and offline, and then that makes the second apex and those tight chicanes even tighter and puts you in a bit of a tricky scenario. And the drivers aren't going to want to give up any lap time, so they'll be pushing through those chicanes, but it is one of those parts of the circuit that you only want to deliver the maximum in qualifying, really. You don't want to take too much risk in practice and risk damaging the car.
Down into that first corner, great overtaking opportunity. Not for Norman Nato here last year. He ended up with a face full of barrier after contact with another driver. It's so tight going down into turn one. It does really sort of bottleneck up. We have seen a fair smattering of contact. We're right on board here with Taylor Barnard. The last race for Neil McLaren in Formula E, as I mentioned earlier on. We understand that Barnard is likely to be off to a Stellantis power team, possibly going the way of Penske, which will be really exciting to see, actually, because Barnard's been a hot property, and I know that he's been on the shopping list of a lot of team managers this season, and it sounds like Penske are the ones that managed to take priority and get him signed up.
Yeah, he's been super impressive in his full rookie season this season. He's did a couple of races in the previous campaign as well, actually at Berlin, where we were last time out. So I think he's just delivered. He's been consistent. He's been aggressive with his racecraft, but in sensible ways. He's not been getting involved in too many incidents for the sake of it. And I think he's just impressed a lot of people in the paddock, hasn't he, Tom? And Alan, if you were still a team principal, he would have been high on your list, I can imagine, as well.
Yeah, without doubt, he'd have been top of the shopping list. I think there's a few very, very good drivers that have come into the Formula. Another one that was under the radar because clearly Taylor Barnard's been, as we've got a spinner there, Sam Bird, Taylor's teammate.
Spin on cold tyres in the middle of the chicane.
Ooh.
Quite an odd place to spin that.
He spun coming out of the
Very
first part
contact
section, so he's in between the two
all
sections of the chicane there. So you can see that I think he's sort of bounced through the first part and looped it around.
Yeah, thankfully he's all okay and avoided contact with the barrier, which is quite important. Likely to be the last weekend of Sam Bird's Formula E career, which is a huge shame, actually. In terms of the performances this year, they haven't really been there, especially when you look at what Barnard's been able to do on the other side of the garage. But Sam Bird, a stalwart in the Formula E paddock, he's been here since day one, and he's going to be very sorely missed.
And I think you can't underestimate the impact that he would have had on Taylor Barnard in his rookie season, because Sam Bird, he's so experienced in this championship. He brings a lot to that team. Okay, his individual performances this season haven't been where he would have wanted them to be, but I think for sure, if you ask Taylor Barnard, has he had a positive impact? Has he been a good teammate to learn from? He'll be saying yes. Yeah,
phenomenal mentor has Sam Bird been to Taylor Barnard in his Formula E career. You can see Jake Hughes here harrying that Maserati through the first sector. Bit of a difference, by the way, in terms of the appearance for the cars this weekend. So when the drivers are in a normal 300 kilowatt lap, you'll see that the LED lights are not illuminated this weekend. When they're in an attack mode lap, so 350 kilowatt, they'll be turning blue. It's for this weekend only. It's part of the partnership with Marvel Fantastic Four. And so when you see the cars illuminated with those blue lights, that's when you know they're in four-wheel drive. They're in 350 kilowatts of attack mode.
Should be easier as well to spot that on the fact we've got this indoor circuit where there's not so many bright lights, natural light coming into it. I think hopefully for viewers back home, when they go into the inside part of the circuit, it'll be easy to make that distinction. Yeah,
these cars looked very quick, especially on this grippy sandpaper-like surface on the inside of it as well. You can see them really hooking it up out of that final corner. It was actually this venue where the indoor speed record was set by Jake Hughes a few years ago in the Gem Beta car. That was back in 2023. Did a fantastic job. It was him and Lucas Di Grassi who were going head-to-head against one another on this indoor section. And Jake just managed to beat Di Grassi for that. You can see this is what we're talking about, though, with the traffic. Look at Da Costa and Wehrlein here coming through this final sector.
They do have a bit of history.
Yeah, let's be honest. Remember back to Free Practice 1 where they came together and it sent Da Costa into the wall. It was all sort of dismissed, rather hushed tones. Let's not talk about it.
Clearly, you know, this in Berlin in free practice, there was a total miscommunication between the two drivers, and it ended up with one of them punting the other one into the wall. Not exactly what you want, and definitely from a team point of view, they're not going to shout about it, put it in the press release, and talk about all of the language that was mentioned in the post-test briefing. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was a bit like that sort of unspoken Christmas family drama that you have. Oh no, we'll forget about it. It's all water under the bridge.
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic though to hear Florian Modlinger come out, and quite quickly he was quick to basically take any fault away from Pascal Wehrlein, and we know the dynamic between Da Costa and Wehrlein at times has been a little bit tense in the garage, and there's obviously the rumours that where we're into silly season now about who's going to be at Porsche next year.
Yeah, exactly that. You know, Da Costa, as we understand it, there are a few different options as we look at the number 13 going through this attack mode section down at turn 16 into the final sector. But yeah, a few rumours about where Da Costa's going to line up. Will he be with Porsche next year? He has got a contract at the moment. Will he walk away from that contract? Will he end up at Jaguar potentially as well? There's a lot of dominoes that we sort of need to fall, but the problem is we're waiting for that first link in the chain, which we all believe is Da Costa and his whereabouts. Let's have a look here at Max Günther coming in towards the Custom House chicane then. Clips the curb on the inside. This is where Bird looped it around a few moments ago. Right up against the wall on the exit there. Let's have a look on that inside curb that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, he took that, just caught the edge of that higher part of the curb, and it definitely moves the car around a bit, doesn't it, Alan?
As it also puts a lot of shock through the front drive shafts into the front E-motor as well, so you've got to be a little bit careful with that. Another thing that we talked about earlier on, being careful, is just driving unnecessarily slowly in the last sector, and Eduardo Matara has got a black and white warning flag for doing just that.
Yeah, driving unnecessarily slowly. You can see the white flags there for drivers just to be aware of what's happening. Of course, they'll have the race engineers on the radio as well. Now, Lola Yamaha apt yesterday. Difficult day at the office, especially for Lucas de Grassi after the technical problems that we saw twice for him bringing out the red flag in the session. And let's get down to Alexa and catch up with their team principal, Thomas Biermeier.
Thank you, Tom. I'm down here with Thomas, and as Tom just said, we saw Lucas stopping out on track twice yesterday. Do you think you can kind of explain to us what the issue was and anything you've been able to do to rectify it overnight?
Like I mentioned already yesterday, it was a failure of a sensor, and this was caused because the ground table was not working anymore, and we found it, we repaired it, and until now everything looks fine.
So no concerns today about it?
No issues. Clearly we changed the battery because the relay was not working after the damage. But now it looks good and no complaints from Lucas.
And tell me about your run plan going into today now. How does the lack of running for Lucas yesterday impact your plans for what you can get done today?
Yeah, track time is always important. Clearly we lost some laps yesterday, but now we have our plan. We will do some quali laps later because everybody knows that qualifying is very important. So we get ready, hopefully.
Feeling optimistic?
I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic because, yeah, as a boss you have to be optimistic, but we know it's difficult, but we try our best and hopefully we will have a good race today and tomorrow to have a good end of the season.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you to Alexa. Thank you to Thomas Biermeier down there in pit lane. Yeah, interesting to see what's going to happen here for Lucas de Grassi and the Lola Yamaha app team this weekend. It's been a challenging couple of weekends for de Grassi. Biffed it into the barrier in FP3 in Berlin, had to get the car repaired and put him on the back foot for Sunday's race, and then of course the technical problems yesterday, so he'll be hoping for a much cleaner remainder of the weekend here as we look at Nick de Vries negotiating his way through the first sector. De Vries back in that seat, of course, after missing Berlin a fortnight ago. Drugovic was in the car and got debut points in his second ever Formula E race. That was amazing.
Yeah, he did really well to, I think, on the first day in Berlin, race one, because we had that double header there, he really took his time to learn all the processes, learn what Formula E was about as a championship, because the racing in Formula E, it's fair to say, is very different to a lot of other single-seater race series. He actually hadn't raced a single-seater since he won the Formula 2 championship a few years previous to that. So it had been a while since he'd been in that race scenario in a single-seater. But the way he navigated that second race in Berlin, which was super complicated, energy management was critical. Really top job from Drugovic there.
And we've been talking about silly season, about where drivers are going to line up. Mahindra, they're both locked in for de Vries and Mortara for at least another year. It takes them to the end of the Gen 3 Evo era with that driver lineup.
Losing 2.5 tenths, turn 1, 2, and from 4 to 8, another 2.5.
So half a second, pretty much in the first sector alone there for Lucas de Grassi.
But he is quickest at the moment, but he has done a 350 kilowatt attack lap.
Yeah, Mortara also just popped one in there second as we look at Verne harrying the car. This is the problem, isn't it? Just going through these corners. You see how blind it is with the walls elevated so high. In the group stage of qualifying, there is a very distinct possibility that you could see drivers getting impeded, I reckon.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because it's a fairly short lap in comparison to the other circuits we go to as well. I think it's just around 2 kilometres the full distance of the lap. So again, it's just that critical moment of getting track position. With track evolution as well, we normally see the fastest laps coming towards the end of the session. So again, everyone wants to cross the line with a matter of a few seconds on the clock still to run. So it just makes it a real challenge for the drivers and the teams to get it right.
Yeah, it does, and it's also a narrow circuit as well, so that if you are trying to get out of the way, there's not very much room to actually deliver that as Jean-Eric Verne pops himself up into the top of the table. But it's going to be a factor, has always been when we've raced here, doesn't matter which year, and so I can expect the same trip to the steward's office for quite a few of the team principals and their drivers at some point.
Looking here at Nick Cassidy making his way back into the garage. Great job from him in Berlin a fortnight ago. Came from 21st in the sort of latter stages of the race to make his way up through to win it in spectacular style. Jaguar getting the double in Germany.
Yeah, it was a very, very impressive result. It wasn't just 2 wins they had on the Saturday-Sunday, it was also 2 fifth places as well. So, you know, 4 top 6s, and that's really leapfrogged them into the fight for potentially, I would say, more second in the team's title than necessarily challenging for the overall team's title, because I would feel that that's more than likely going to go the way with Porsche. But Jaguar have really been on song lately, and we know they're very, very quick here. But interestingly, just watching here as they're coming in today, there is going to be the charge, pit charge, and you saw the little sort of canopy coming up, so that actually that can be accessed by the driver. Now, not on this occasion, but they will be practicing that again in FP2.
Yeah, pit boost in effect for the first race of the weekend here this afternoon. Extra 10% worth of energy for the drivers to get added during the race. They must make 1 pit stop. Very short pit lane here in London as well. And you can see it's pretty crowded even with no cars in it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it all works out under racing conditions. Teams can only pit 1 driver and 1 car per time. So you can see a pit boost demonstration going on there with the light flashing here for Zane Maloney. As we look at Nick Cassidy coming through into turn 16 and just gets caught behind Degrassi here. On board then here with Nick Cassidy coming into turn 16. Degrassi in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Degrassi is actually slightly off the inside line, almost trying to get out of the way of the actual cars, but he's then put himself in the way of those using attack mode behind. So you can see him leaving gap on the inside to let a car come up the inside of him, but then he's now blocking, and you can see the reaction from his helmet cam there. He looks to the outside very late because he doesn't expect anyone to be there. So one of those unfortunate scenarios, but something that's definitely worth noting for later on.
Yeah, I can't imagine he's going to be displeased with that there, Lucas Degrassi, because the stewards are taking a pretty dim view of it. We heard Marek Aniszewski, race director, yesterday saying, you know, be very careful about going unnecessarily slowly.
I think there Lucas was getting out of the way. It is the question of unnecessarily slowly, I think, is the only thing that you could really look at. But, you know, it's really, really tough because you're trying to keep out the way, trying to do the best of it, and to do that, you would need to go flat out, but that obviously is not what they're trying to achieve either. But one thing I was just going to mention, and you saw it there, just the cars jumping, there's big, big difference around here with the cars that are absorbing the bumps and the cars that are not. And we saw earlier on Jake Hughes, and you mentioned he was hustling the car. The car was all over the place. It was just dancing around on top of the bumps as opposed to just riding over them. And so I think you're going to see quite a big difference if we get some nice slow-mos between them.
Yeah, on board here with Taylor Barnard very briefly as he comes across the timing line, goes to the top of the pile, 1:08.3, so about 0.3 of a second away so far from the quickest time in FP1 yesterday. We've still got 20 minutes left though of this session, so plenty of time for those improvements. New livery for the Neil McLaren team for their final weekend, as we said, and also the same helmet designs for Taylor Barnard and Sam Bird, which I can't wait to dissect in commentary in the race later on.
You've been thrilled about that, Tom, haven't you?
I've not mentioned it once.
No.
I haven't been going on
leave that to Tom personally.
Yeah.
Tom's a helmet
to do with the
spotter
McLarens
today.
in qualifying and in the race. It's all you, Tom.
Thank you, much appreciated. Looking then at Sam Bird in the other Neon McLaren, just making his way through. You can see up over the rise in towards turn 19. And Bird on a personal best lap at the moment through turns 20 into the indoor section. You can hear the tyres chirping away there. He's in a full attack mode lap here as Bird. He goes to make it a Neon McLaren 1-2, just slotting in a couple of hundredths of a second behind his young teammates.
Really neat last sector from Sam there, his fastest of everyone. Looking at the times, Mortara is up by just over 3 tenths per second coming into the final part of the lap now, Tom.
Yeah, just looking at the lap traffic in front of you, you need to be an owl this weekend, don't you? Eyes in the back of your head to be able to work out what's going on with all the cars finding their way through. Mortara just over cooking it a bit there into 19, sends him offline for the final corner of turn 20 and then right up against the wall. Still manages to go fastest, but without that mistake, he could have been probably a tenth of a second or so quicker.
So obviously unable to change calibrations for this next run, but feel free to adjust the flight and shift as you require.
Any ideas, Billy?
I think they're with McLaren, Tom, so we said you, no?
Thank you, much appreciated.
Bite and shift, there was lots of technical terms there from Taylor Barnard's engineer.
But yeah, I would think the shift is the migration of the brakes as you're recuperating energy. But yeah, we'll need to go and get Tom to Explorers. Robin Freins is doing full rally spec as he came in there. That was your Scandinavian flick from Belgium. From a Dutchman, sorry, apologies.
backing his way into the penultimate corner. Cooper Kiro currently 6th and 14th. Beckman the quickest of the two drivers at the moment. Some rumours going around about what the lineup is going to be next year. We understand that Ticktum is going to be locked into that seat, but who will be alongside him? I was chatting to a journalist in the paddock this morning who said possibly Nico Muller could end up in that seat next year. Wait and see what happens. Anyway, let's go down to Alex Hui, the team principal of Cooper Kiro, and catch up with him in the middle of FP2.
Thank you, Tom. Now, before we do talk FP2, I hear you brought a special guest to track this weekend. You've had a horse here. Can you explain that to us?
That's a campaign to redefine racing. So basically, if you search what racing means in day one, it was horse racing. But nowadays, today in London, we want to redefine as motor racing, and especially in a venue like here in Excel.
Well, this is a bit of a unique venue, a unique challenge, and we've got a pit boost race today. How much can you even plan for it when you have such a series of tricky challenges like here?
I don't think it's anything different fundamentally compared to other boost charge race we have done. We have done a couple of them already, so I think we're more familiar. But the differences in Excel is the circuit is really tight to overtake. So I would say overtaking on track will be more unlikely or more difficult. Then the strategy when to pit boost will probably be more interesting. And also here you got indoor section and you got weather. When you got if you got wet and wet outside and dry inside, that will mix up things as well together with the pit boost. So it will be. It looks like today we stay dry, so I hope like that. Otherwise, it will be quite tough for the driver. Yeah.
And Dan's previously gone very well here in London. The team's been making big steps in improvement. What are your hopes and expectations for this weekend?
Honestly, I don't try to draw expectations because you never know in Formula E. Because it doesn't really help us it's not helpful to expect anything. So our strategy is always try our best. And I know we got a car, we got a driver can win the race in every single day if things go right. So we'll try.
We'd love to see it. Thank you so much, Alex. We'll let you get back to it.
Thanks to Alexa, thanks to Alex. It's not helpful to expect anything. I'm not sure I agree with that, I must be honest with you. But there we are. Anyway, yeah, good campaign that the Cooper Kiro team have got going on this year as Ticktum goes to the top of the pile. Nice and on cue, thanks there, Dan. Much appreciated. Into the 1 minute 7s now, but redefining racing, that team is doing, as Alex was saying, and they've got some special jerseys this weekend. They've got one that looks like a jockey jersey, one that looks like a rugby jersey. So keep an eye out for that in the Cooper Kiro garage.
Absolute handbrake into turn 1. End of braking.
So I assume he's talking about locking the rears there into T1, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, as Maloney had his lap time taken away for this big lock-up down at the chicane and then going down the escape road. That's going to have damaged that right front tyre a little bit, I would suggest there, Billy.
That stayed locked for a while, didn't it? Normally you can see like a small lock-up and then you're trying to feather to come out the brake to sort of get that tyre functioning, but you can see he just locked up the whole way, all the way until he almost came to a stop.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he locks up, you can see them release the brake and then hit the brake again very hard and locks up it further.
Yeah, it's difficult to, have it release once you've locked it up. You tend to, it's the brake's hot in the tyre and it just seems to do that, especially around here because it is a slippery surface as well.
Yeah, it'll be like a 50p piece after that, unfortunately, there for Zane Maloney, currently bottom of the pile at the moment, courtesy of having that lap time deleted. His teammate Lucas Di Grassi faring a bit better, down the order or up the order for him compared to Maloney in 9th position as we ride on board with the reigning world champion Oliver Rowland. Special helmet livery for this weekend in celebration of taking the title. If you remember, a couple of years ago, he didn't have a Formula E seat, walked away from Mahindra midway through the season. He was talking to Saunders about this prior to the weekend. Great video if you catch it on the Formula E socials, and saying, it was a big risk to walk away from that seat, but I knew that the opportunity would be greater. He said, I knew I had to make the most of it. Walked back into the Nissan team where he had some success previously, and you can see quite clearly he has taken full advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare in motorsport that when you have a secure seat in a championship of the calibre of Formula E that you would think or see one of the drivers to sort of give that seat up effectively, because it's, you know, only 22 seats on the grid. It's not long at all. Not many seats at all, should I say, for the drivers to fight for. So it's a huge, brave move it was from Oliver Rowland, and obviously now he's champion, it's fully paid off.
Yeah, no doubt about it. See the bumps here in the super slow-mo as we watch Rowland 4 wheels in the air coming through turn 14.
But landing very well and then straight onto the power. It's not as if it's bouncing and porpoising from there.
Got a double yellow flag down at turn 20 that's just cleared very briefly, so I assume that somebody probably driving a little bit slowly through there, getting ready to go into the pit lane. Da Costa on a quick lap. He's in full attack mode at the moment. The blue light illuminating the car here through 19, though, a bit deep into there. Yeah, loses a bit of time. That's going to cost him a few tenths of a second. I don't know if this will be enough to go to the top of the pile. Indeed, it's not. So drops down to 4th quickest.
Yeah, but that would easily have been quickest if he had actually made that apex going into the second last corner.
You say that, Alan, I'm looking at the sector, he actually lost less than a tenth to the fastest sector, so it definitely would have put him right on the bubble, considering he's just under a tenth off. So he would have been
900ths off.
900ths off, so it would have been on the mark if he could have managed to go purple through there, but it's not as big of a loss as I thought it would have been, and we're on board here with Pascal Wehrlein now, navigating his way around this London circuit.
And now coming in, he's got blockage there, coming onto the back straight with one of the Lola Yamas, Lucas de Grassi, getting out of the way, but just not quite quick enough. So this is definitely a loss for Wehrlein, this middle sector. He was quickest in the first sector, but I expect this one. Now, see a bit of oversteer. Oh, I'm not sure if that left rear just touched the Tech Pro barrier there as he came through the chicane.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very scruffy middle sector for Pascal Wehrlein.
And you can see what it's cost him here as well. He's now a few tenths of a second down compared to being up in that first sector. So yeah, he's harrying the car here, but not being able to extract the lap time that he needs to from it. Very important weekend, and deep still into turn 20.
I think we're seeing a frustrated Pascal Wehrlein because he opened the lap really strongly, nearly 2 tenths up in the first part of the lap. But the middle sector, a combination of traffic and then overdriving potentially in that moment of frustration has cost him a lot of time there.
And it seems like you can't do 2 attack laps in a row here. You've got to go and do 1 lap and then cool down. Let's have another look at this coming out of the chicane here. Wehrlein gets a snap of oversteer right on the curb. I want to see a rear-facing view of that. Let's have a look here. Did he clip the wall?
He saw the fence moving a little bit.
It was right up against it, wasn't he?
It was, if he didn't touch it, then it was not very much distance between it and the Tech Pro.
Mitch Evans here is on a blinder of a lap. That first sector was mighty. The middle sector, not the fastest we've seen, but close enough, just under a tenth off what we've seen fastest in the middle part of the lap. And this is a man who was super strong in wet conditions in Berlin, particularly that qualifying session to take pole. He was unbelievable.
Nice to see from Mitch Evans as well. If you compare to where he's been since Sao Paulo, it's nowhere, isn't it, really? He's had a shocker of season 11. We finally thought this might be his year, and it never really got going after that brilliant victory in the first round of the season, and he's struggled ever since. Indeed, the team has struggled since. The results haven't really come their way. It wasn't until Shanghai when they were back on the podium for the first time. If you look at the statistics, Mitch Evans didn't score any points until he won in Berlin, between Sao Paulo and there. So it just goes to show you the struggles that the Kiwi has had. We understand that he's going to be sticking with that team for season 12 as well, which is great news there for him. We'll have a new teammate alongside him because it was announced this week that Nick Cassidy will be on to new adventures. We think he's going to a Stellantis-bound team, possibly Maserati. Whether it will be called Maserati next year is a different matter. Stellantis may decide to rebrand it as one of the many companies that they own, possibly Citroen, we're hearing. So we'll see how that all works out. But either way, looking forward to seeing who's going to end up in that Jaguar seat. I heard a wild rumour that it could even be one of the 2 Jakes, Hughes or Dennis. Dennis, of course, is still contracted with the Andretti team, but there is a performance clause in his contract, as we understand it. So we'll wait and see whether that comes to anything, as Dennis just popped himself up into 8th quickest for now. Also some rumours going around that Andretti could be set to go to the Nissan powertrain in Gen 4 as well. lots of changes potentially afoot in
You love a
Formula E.
rumour, Tom, don't you?
I'm all over it, son. I'm all over it. Looking at Mitch Evans just getting airborne here. He was leaving absolutely nothing on the table. It's coming down into turn 16. I love watching the car through that section because you're going through that right-hander flat out, and then you've got to get really hard on the brakes. As we look at his teammate Nick Cassidy, this was actually reprofiled last year as well. It was actually opened up quite significantly going down into turn 16, made it a little bit wider, but also we saw drivers making mistakes in attack mode as well. Mitch Evans, crucially, he missed attack mode twice in the race, which cost him an opportunity of a stronger result, and potentially was one of the factors which cost him an opportunity of fighting for the driver's title.
Yeah, I mean, this circuit definitely, and that attack mode part of the lap definitely provides lots of challenges.
I think it's drizzling outside.
Yeah, we've just heard from Roland as well. Copy that.
So, we said the rain would stay away for this weekend, but possibly a bit of drizzle in the air, just for a change.
It follows us everywhere. I mean, I kind of expected it to be here, considering we're in London, if I'm honest. But some of the other places we've gone to, you wouldn't expect the rain that we've had to be there.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the unique characteristics of this track as well, because of course it's indoors and outdoors. Obviously here, when you're in the XL, no need to worry about that. But do you remember a couple of years ago, it was a deluge outside. Buemi was complaining that his car was like a swimming pool, because you go outside and it was absolutely bucketing it down. Let's go down to the pit lane in the meantime and catch up with Ian James, the team principal for Neil McLaren. Ian James, of course, the head of that ship, but the team in their final weekend of competition here in Formula E.
Thank you, Tom. I'm down here with Ian, and yeah, it's the final weekend in Papaya for you guys. First things first, talk me through how you're keeping the team focused on this final weekend. It's going to be a little bit tricky.
Honestly, it's not. We saw this in Berlin after the news sort of came out about the fact that this is going to be our final season as the Neil McLaren Formula E team. And to be honest with you, I was a bit concerned about how we'd get our heads back in the game. I didn't have to have any concerns whatsoever. I think in the Berlin weekend, we saw that we were able to execute perfectly throughout the weekend. And coming into London, I know that the team's got their heads focused on the here and now, so no concerns.
And you've got a manufacturer's fight to look at this weekend with Nissan. You've got Taylor and Sam looking for their first win of the season. It's a big weekend for you guys.
Yeah, it's huge. And actually what we're seeing so far is we're struggling a little bit in Push 300 across all the 4 Nissan cars. So we've got a bit of work to do to make sure that we can get into those dual stages in qualifying. So it's going to be, I think, a fight to the bitter end, not only today, but of course tomorrow as well.
And of course it is the home race. It'll be so nice for you guys to be able to have friends, family here, have that support for your 2 British drivers.
It's going to be mega. I mean, the support here in London's always fantastic. As you say, 2 British drivers, a British team. We've got a lot of our partners here today. Tomorrow we turned over the hospitality here to friends and family of the team, which is fantastic. So it's going to be a mega atmosphere, and we're going to go out on a high.
I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you, Ian.
I really like that. Friends and family of the team for their final weekend in Papaya tomorrow.
Yeah, but unfortunately you've got to stay in the comms box. You're working tomorrow, you can't go and enjoy the friends and family of the team.
We're your atmosphere tomorrow, Tom.
Some of us have got to do some work, and it's about time, isn't it?
It certainly is about time you did some. But there's a lot of work being done into that final corner. Now we've just seen 3 or 4 cars trying to finish their lap in 350 kilowatt and just struggling to get the car stopped, running wide, losing everything they've done over the last 1.9 kilometres.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We are now seeing sort of qualifying sims coming in. The lap times have come down quite significantly. Yesterday in FP1, 1:08 flat was the quickest time set by Pascal Wehrlein. Quickest time at the moment with 6 minutes left on the clock is Mitch Evans, a 1:07.5. So they are really, really quick around here. That's, of course, in the 350 kilowatt power mode. That's in full attack mode. But nonetheless, yeah, cars looking a lot faster.
Interesting thing that came out of that chat as well with Ian James, he said all 4 Nissan powertrains, they run the Nissan powertrain as does the Works team, struggling on 300 kilowatt, and they're looking at how do they get out of the group stages into the duels. So it looks like that could be a bit of a fight for them.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? It's all well and good focusing on these 350 kilowatt laps. We love it, watching Jake Hughes negotiating his way through the final sector in the Maserati at the moment. But if you can't go and set a good 300 kilowatt lap time, it's kind of immaterial, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's something that sometimes gets neglected, because 350 kilowatts is the glamorous side of qualifying, where they get all the tools and all the devices, as Jake Hughes goes up to second there with that lap. But yeah, if they don't make it through into the duels, then there's no point of focusing so much on it.
Dan Tickton, home race for him. 6 British drivers on the grid this weekend. There was a great photo shoot with 6 British drivers yesterday, and they gave Sam Bird a leg up because he's a little bit shorter than the likes of Jake Dennis, for example, and some others.
Easy, Alan, easy, Alan.
I did see that knowing glance in the commentary box
got
there.
A death stare there, Tom.
Always said Sam was a giant of a man.
Got a double yellow down at turn 19. That's
It's just people going slowly.
Yeah.
And it's the old thing, 4 minutes to go, qualifying sims, whether it be your 300 kilowatt or 350, and everyone's just going slowly, and they're going so slowly, it's alerting the system that a car seems to be stopping.
Yeah, drivers, as you said, getting those qualifying simulations in the last 5 minutes of this session. Not a particularly long turnaround, as always, between free practice 2 and qualifying. Only about an hour and a half or so to go between the 2 sessions. Let's have a look here at Frykes. Oh, he had a spin, so that's what one of the yellow flags would have been out for at the penultimate corner. And the McLaren there of Sam Bird just getting in the wrong place at the wrong time. Very blind entry into turn 19. If you remember a couple of years ago here, in the first race of the weekend in 2023, we had an incident there which blocked the road. It became a car park, which brought out the red flag. Thankfully, no such dramas to worry about here in free practice 2, but there is a fair bit of traffic. You can see a lot of congestion in the middle part of the sector, which is quite apt for London, really.
Yeah, there's 6 cars on their outlap, and there's 20 cars in total on the circuit. So there's a big speed differential, especially at this moment in time.
Jake Hughes, it went for a push, and he's done a call out. Now he's on his second push lap of this run. He's got purple in the first sector as well to boot.
It's quite difficult to work out who's really got the performance advantages at this point. You've got a Jaguar that's fastest, a Porsche-powered Cupra Kira, then a Stellantis-powered Maserati, a Mahindra in 4th, and a Porsche-powered Andretti in 5th place at the moment. It's sort of all over the shop. Hopefully, in the last 3 minutes, we get a bit more of a semblance as to what it's going to look like going into qualifying.
Well, to be honest with you, I hope we don't. I actually hope that qualifying is what I expect it to be, is where there's a few people that we just do not expect pull it out of the bag, and some that we do expect, it just doesn't quite fit for them.
I must say, I do agree with you. Maybe from a team's perspective, to be fair, they would be hopeful of that. We've got a yellow down at
27.
turn 1. Yeah, that's Jake Dennis, who looks like he's come into some bother. There is a new escape road that's been added, but he's had a spin. Has he clipped the barrier potentially there? You can see the yellow lights illuminating on the back of the car. Gets it righted, and that yellow flag will go away, but clearly the Season 9 world champion has ended up in some bother there.
Yeah, not ideal for him, and also not ideal for Jake Hughes, because he was fastest in the first 2 sectors, lost 3 tenths in the final part of the lap, which would have been more than enough considering he's only 600ths behind the top spot to put him into the fastest position. So his lap a little bit compromised at the end there.
2 minutes left on the session. You can see drivers now sort of slowing down, getting themselves ready for that one final fly. Now looking on board here with Nick de Vries, and you can see all sorts of elbows and angles going on here, trying to get this car negotiated through these slower turns. Out of it now comes the Mahindra driver, and he goes to the top of the pile. Great job from Nick de Vries. Fantastic final sector from the former world champion. Norman Nato, meanwhile, down in 21st place, still looking for some more performance from his car in the last minutes of this session.
Well, Nissan will need this, because Nissan are fighting for either top spot or second in the team's title, and they really need Norman Nato to pull everything out of the bag to also score points alongside the multitude that Oliver Rowland scored this year.
Yeah, despite what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago in Berlin, sounds like Nato's going to be set to keep that seat for season 12, and he really does, as you say, need to get those strong performances out. He has been quite unfortunate with a lot of circumstances not falling in his favour this year. He's had a few technical problems, a couple of penalties and so on. If you remember back to Miami when he should have won that race, but for the attack mode misusage penalty that he suffered from.
Yeah, but if you misuse it and it's against the rules, you deserve the... I don't see that as kind of unfortunate. I see it as that's part of the game.
I get what you're saying.
3 other people that also, I think, if I remember, are correct. So
yeah,
at the end of the day, he needs to score points, or they will not win the team's or the manufacturer's title.
No, it is imperative, as you say, for Nissan to be strong with both cars here this weekend. So let's see what Nato can do. Verline just popped himself up into 4th quickest with 30 seconds left on the clock. Mullis just had a lap time deleted down at turn 11. So that's due to track limits. Quite a few drivers actually having their lap times deleted down at that corner as well. So just keep an eye on it. So it's into the custom house chicane, isn't it? Catley, meanwhile, 20th for him at the moment. He's on a full push lap, though, as you can see. Personal best for him, just a couple of hundredths away from De Vries' quickest time in this sector. De Vries is not on a full 350 kilowatt lap, and it might impede Nick Cassidy here then, because he's catching him in the wrong place through this chicane.
I think those chicanes are the hardest part if you're going slowly to navigate and to stay out of the way, as we see lots of cars really bunching up, and De Vries is definitely compromising Nick Cassidy there.
Yeah, well, the thing is De Vries on a 300 kilowatt push lap? You know, that's the question. There is a big pace differential between the two performances, and look at that, a big send to the inside here for Nick Cassidy, probably born out of frustration after being impeded on that final flying lap. I think it's going to compromise his final position here, and it does. It goes only 19th fastest. He will not be best pleased.
I don't think he really cared about his final position there. That was more of a statement, but a frustrated statement, because, as you said, Nick De Vries was actually still on his own push lap. It wasn't as if he was on a slow lap and blocking him intentionally.
Yep, checkered flag is now out then. Is anybody on a personal best? Not really, to be honest with you. We've sort of seen the best of the best from these lap times. I don't think anyone's going to overhaul Nick De Vries in the final few moments of this session. Can Freitz do anything? No, not quite. Let's have a look then at Nick De Vries. This is the moment we saw coming down into turn 16. So De Vries is on a 300 kilowatt lap. Cassidy's on a 350 kilowatt lap. And, well, the big performance differential between the two, it's not like De Vries was going intentionally slowly. A couple of minutes before, this is what happened here for Jake Dennis. He just ran on down at the first corner and had to do a 360 to get it facing back towards the track. There is now a new runoff area there as well, actually, a bit of a gap on the Tech Pro barrier on the right-hand side, but it is pretty tight going through that part of the circuit if you have to use the runoff section. So Dennis there just deciding to loop it round and get back onto the track in the previous way that we've seen here before. Either way, the end of free practice 2 ends with Nick De Vries, top of the class, a 1:07.5. So we're about half a second quicker than we saw in FP2 yesterday. The track's really speeding up.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised, Tom, if in the duels we saw potentially low 1:07s, maybe creeping into the 1:06s, because this track is continuing to develop and rubber is being laid down as we go through all the sessions.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So these are the drivers that will now be doing their practice starts, 300 kilowatts and all-wheel drive in starting conditions of Formula E. And you can see just how they launch away from the lights. And it isn't a particularly long run down towards that first corner. It feels even shorter this year.
It's certainly faster. Distance is the same, but they do really get off the line. And also with some of the slow corners as well, leading down into the chicane on the first lap, down into turn 6. When you come out of the building, then I can see the acceleration down there and the few side-by-side incidents coming our way.
Yeah, it is going to be a proper bottleneck down in towards that first corner, as it always is on the opening lap. Qualifying this weekend is absolutely imperative. Unlike what we had in Berlin a fortnight ago, where we had a very wide, quite open circuit, you could cycle your way through the field even if you'd not done particularly well. Cassidy was the prime example of that on Sunday. He started down in 20th on the grid and came through to take victory. But if you look at this circuit, it's complete contrast. Incident between De Vries, Verline and Evans has been noted as well. I don't think we saw that, did we?
Well, I think that's when they came into attack mode, because if my memory is correct, there was a car on the left-hand side, which I presume was Evans, and the De Vries Verline, I think we knew.
Yeah, we'll wait and see what the outcome is of that. This is Freit's spin.
Man, I don't know what's happening there. Like, I had a few warnings already, and now I just lost the rig completely.
See the car pitching quite a lot going through there, and Sam Bird thankfully getting on the anchors quite well and managing to avoid contact with the envisioned driver in that final sector. Anyway, free practice 2 comes to a conclusion here in London for the Marvel Fantastic 4 E-Prix, and it is Nick De Vries who's quickest of the lot in the Mahindra ahead of Mitch Evans. Dan Ticktum leading the British charge from 3rd place ahead of Pascal Verline and the next Briton of Jake Hughes in the Maserati. Stoffel Van Dorn is 6th ahead of Nico Muller and Eden Mortara. Antonio Felix da Costa and then Sam Bird completing the top 10, just half a second separating 10 drivers. So that is a very small margin, and I'm sure is only going to get smaller as we go into qualifying. Jake Dennis had a spin at the end of that session. Reigning world champion Oliver Rowland only 13th fastest, and we saw Nick Cassidy in some bother at the end of that session. He was impeded by Nick de Vries, courtesy of the fact that he was on a 350 kilowatt lap and de Vries was only on a 300 kilowatt lap, meaning that Cassidy was not able to improve and ended the session 19th quickest. Nato down there in 21st place. He needs to make an improvement if he's to help Nissan's challenge for the team's title here this afternoon. But Dan Ticktum, third quickest for him in the Cupra Kiro. That's a great result, and it will give the British driver, the winner from Jakarta, some confidence going into the penultimate qualifying session of 2025. Mitch Evans also P2, continuing the form that we saw from him in Berlin a couple of weeks ago. But a fantastic job from Nick de Vries in the Mahindra to end up at the top of the pile at the end of free practice 2. I think he'd be pretty happy with that. Do you think Rowland down in 13th is cause for concern, Billy?
I don't think so. I think there's super tight margins. I think Oliver Rowland, like many others, probably didn't have the cleanest of laps. And I think there's always a bit of time with the engineers now to dissect what's gone on and to make improvements. So Oliver Rowland, I think when it counts, he normally delivers.
Yep, Oliver Rowland then down in 13th place. You can see a special helmet design here for this weekend. He's also painted the top gold, courtesy of the fact that he is now the world champion. So, I don't know, Nissan's in 13th and 21st place there, Alan.
I actually, just looking at it, Sam Bird is the top Nissan runner in 10th place, with Rowland in 13th, with Barnard in 15th and Nato in 21st. Admittedly, Nato he only ran 300 kilowatt, but it looks to me as if they are actually struggling a little bit, and they don't quite have the performance they expected. So I do think they're going to have to work pretty hard to get themselves into the dual stages.
Well, we did hear yesterday that the Nissan teams were struggling with pace on 300 kilowatt laps, so I hope that they're able to rectify that. There's not a particularly big turnaround between now and qualifying, an hour and 30 minutes essentially, 90 minutes to go until we get that session underway. What can they do? Well,
what you would have hoped they would have been able to do it overnight, because right now it's just about the last little tickle to try to find it and see where they go.
Yeah, no doubt about it, as the drivers make their way up to the weighbridge. Let's have a look then at some highlights from the second free practice session here in London. Well, 22 drivers filtered out onto the track, and thankfully, unlike yesterday, a relatively uneventful affair in terms of the red flags, but we did see a few drivers pushing the limits, including Sam Bird in the early stage of the session. He had a spin down at the Custom House chicane. Thankfully, no sensor problems for Lucas de Grassi this time out. He brought out the red flag yesterday. We did see him, though, impeding Nick Cassidy. That was the first time out of two that Cassidy's lap time was compromised in the session. We also saw a big lock-up here for Zane Maloney in the other Lola Yamaha Apps machine. So we'll be making some changes to the brake bias, and the cars dancing around on a knife edge, including Pascal Wehrlein, the Season 10 world champion. He was right up against the wall on one occasion. Evans briefly went fastest in the session, put in a good lap time for the Jaguar TCS Racing team. We saw Van Dorn having a bit of a lock-up down into the penultimate corner, and a spin also for Robin Price down into there as well, which caused Sam Bird to have to take evasive action. Jake Dennis also made a mistake down to the first corner, did a three-point turn and got it facing in the right direction and back on to the track without too much drama. But it was Nick de Vries who was quickest of the lot for Mahindra. A great return to Formula E after missing Berlin a couple of weeks ago. The Mahindra driver will be very happy with that, very confident going into qualifying. So the drivers now making their way back into the weighbridge. So we look here at Antonio Felix Acosta, and we look here at Norman Nato. Not a great session for Nissan by any stretch of the imagination. The factory team 13th and 21st. Let's have a listen here to Nato. Can't really hear what he's saying there, unfortunately.
Yeah, the body language, it's clearly he's speaking to his engineer and saying it looks like he has got the front tight in the car and then the rear's breaking away from him.
Yeah, my French unfortunately isn't particularly brilliant. Alan, you've lived in Monaco for a while. Yeah, I know, but you keep talking over the top of it. So, yeah, basically he's just got no feeling for the grip. He's got understeer, he's got rear oversteer when it's coming off the bumps.
Well, qualifying gets underway in an hour and a half's time. We'll see you then here in London.